Hello, everyone. I am NB Geek. Welcome to Ten Fort, and I think you guys are in for a treat today. Last week we started doing history of film, and we got about an hour or so into it, and we barely scratched the surface. Now, I don't know much about the history of film, but thankfully, the two people I have here know the history of film very well, and I think you guys are in for a treat of the history of it. So, start off with my co-host who's been with me a long time, the man who makes Twitter trolls cry and mops the floors with their tears, Jack Beers.
Man, you should have seen the Twitter trolls yesterday.
Yes, yes.
And Bones. And Bones.
Oh, and Bones. Say hi to Bones.
Hi, Bones.
And
I can't wave.
Alyssa, I'm going to have to come up with an introduction for you. I don't have one yet, but we're going to have to work on it. But Alyssa, when you were in the chat last week and then I asked you to come up because, you guys were really talking. It was like once you guys really got into that synergy, I was just like, I'm sitting back and I'm like, I just want to hear what you guys say. And I just wanted to ask questions because I was like, this is fucking awesome. This is the kind of history. I love history. Jack, I know, knows this. I love history. But, history is so vast. And, the history of filmmaking. And I think, unfortunately, like I was talking last week, is you got these people nowadays. Oh, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? Oh, yeah, it was a great movie. It was awesome. Did you watch it? Did you actually see the fucking movie, or were you too busy on your goddamn phone, tablet, or whatever you want to do? What? And then they go into saying things like, it's cheesy. Oh, it's old. Oh, it's out of date. It's like, doesn't keep up with the times. Well, no shit, fucking Sherlocks. But if it wasn't for these people who did these silent films, who did this music, who came up with the idea for talkies, who came up with stuff, think about this. I brought this up earlier today on Captain Trex. I said, think about stop motion animation. I had thought about this in a long time. Remember Gumby?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Stop motion animation.
Yes.
Yep. And, we kind of got, and I know we're probably getting ahead, but I really want to definitely talk about that. But I was talking about, let's really dive into, the idea of stop motion animation when I was talking. So it was like, here, photo, here, days, weeks, months, just to get a 30-second. Talk about dedication. You want to talk about dedication on a computer? Sorry, I'm a computer guy. It's a little bit easier that way because somebody else did all the software. I just have to go through it. These guys had to literally move here, clip here, move here, clip here. King Kong, for example. So Alyssa, Jack, please, you guys, we talked about this backstage. Where do you guys want to pick up with? I know you said you did a lot of research. So if we go back in time, we go back in time. I don't care.
Well, I want to start off with Muybridge, Edward Muybridge. So, you saw the video I sent you earlier of with the horses. I don't know if you want to play it or not, but
I'll play it. Yeah,
it's copyright free. So,
let me go ahead and.
So the reason why that exists is because at the time the governor of California, whose name was Leland Stanford, which was what Stanford University is named after, he had a bet with somebody that when a horse gallops, it doesn't lift all of its feet at one point, right? That was the bet. So Leland.
Really?
Yeah, so Leland hired Muybridge to figure out how to prove that, because when a horse gallops, it's usually too fast for the eye to see. So
Yes,
he came up.
if you've ever been to, if you've ever been to a horse race, or even, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida for a time, and if you saw the Orange Park Kennel Club, the dogs that would go out there, I mean, there was Rusty the Rabbit who went by, which was a fake rabbit, and then they'd run, and like you're saying about the dogs, or sorry, the horse. You don't your eyes can't keep up with the speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he figured out, okay, well, if I have a horse just gallop in front of a bunch of cameras, and I have some tripwires that takes the picture, he can have a series of frames of a horse galloping, and in that you can actually see he lifts all four legs.
Now, folks, this is what they're talking about here. Let me I gotta minimize. Unfortunately, I still need to get my monitor fixed on my computer. But if you look at this is early motion. Look at that. He's showing how the feet, with the tripwires and all that, it's like, all 4 feet are coming off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Now, 4 years before all of this happened, Muybridge used to have a wife, and found out that she was having an affair, and so found the lover and killed him, shot him dead. Right? He walked up to him. He said, "My wife has a message for you," and then boom, shot him dead. And he didn't run. He actually turned himself in. He was peaceful and all that. He went to trial the following year, and he was acquitted on the grounds of what they call justifiable homicide, because the jury was basically like, well, if I was in that situation, I would have done the same thing. So they acquitted him. So he was free to go. This was in California, by the way. This was Wild West California.
Oh,
right?
boy.
Right. So,
Jack, you don't want to know about what I've been doing with history right now, because I'm focusing on California and post-Reconstruction on my history lessons. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I want to go into off subject, but for history things, I do want to go into what happened in the western part of the country during the Civil War and Reconstruction, and then we got to remember the Transcontinental Railroad was coming in, and we had very abusive rules for both former slaves, freed blacks, and Chinese. So unfortunately, and
Native Americans as well.
Yeah,
Native Americans as well. You're right. And me, when I teach history, me, I've told you before, I teach the good, the bad, the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't pussyfoot around that shit. I let my kids know that's but that's
so Muybridge got famous for this, right? And he created something called the Zoopraxiscope. It's basically a camera. And so in 1888, Edison, he gets the attention of Edison, who meets him, and he wants to combine the Zoopraxiscope with his phonograph. So they do, and that becomes the kinetoscope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for everybody who doesn't know, including myself, what is the kinetoscope?
The kinetoscope was basically the large box. You put your eyes in, you crank the wheel, and it'll
early version of the ViewMaster, basically.
A very early version of the ViewMaster. Now, I mentioned this last week. Edison started putting out these kinetoscopes and opening up these kinetoscope parlors, which were later called Nickelodeons.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you talking about the Nickelodeon. I mean, dude, I wish I had known that back when I was watching Nick.
Oh, I didn't know that back then either.
Yeah, Nobody did.
I just thought it was a strange but cool name.
I'm 1041, folks. I was around when you used to have a show called "You Can't Do That on Television."
Oh yeah, I
okay?
remember that show.
I remember that show too. Very, very. That's where Nickelodeon got their slime. But
Yeah,
anyways,
that's when they were pretty cool back in the day.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
said I don't know.
you got slimed. Yeah,
I wanted to actually go on that show just to say I don't know, just to get.
I would have loved to be slimed. Oh, you slime me all day. But anyways, that sounded dirty.
But
Never
anyway,
mind.
Getting back to the history. Back to the history.
So okay, so like these Nickelodeons were popular around that time, and so in 1904, a man named William Fox buys his first Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Right. He buys, over the years, he starts buying more and more, and he starts making a lot of money. And so he eventually, in 1915, creates the Fox Film Corporation, who later on become 20th Century Fox,
Correct.
which is now
Okay.
like 20th Century Pictures or something like that.
Yeah, something beyond larger than life.
But yeah, but it starts off in 1904 with William Fox buying his first Nickelodeon.
Mhm.
In 1908, that the Edison, Eastman Kodak, and others, they combined and they formed something called the Motion Picture Patents Company,
Mhm.
and that's that union that if you wanted to make a movie, you had to go through them. If you didn't go through them, Edison would send his goons or shit and stuff like that, or he'd sue you.
And the carpetbaggers or something. The Teamster,
Yeah.
or not the Teamsters,
Which-
sorry, the carpetbaggers or. So was the early that one there? Was that like we talked about last week? Was that kind of akin to where he did those pictures like that? Was it still akin to it's picture, 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 but it's going so fast that you see that? Was that
Yeah.
kind of akin to the reels like you were talking about the early cam where you see the motion like the flip book?
The flipper, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going with. So it was kind of in a flip book kind of format. They were progressing from that.
hmm Yeah, they were progressing from all that, and they were also slowly trying to find other ways to incorporate sound into their stuff. Not talking sounds, but like music and
Right.
stuff like that. So between 1910, 1915, all these film studios come to Los Angeles. A man named Carl Laemmle opens Universal Studios. Well, he doesn't open it yet, but he builds it and he films his first movie in 1914. I've never seen it. It's called Damon and Pythias. Damon and Pythias.
Okay.
Never heard of it before until I looked it up. But then of course he officially opens in 1915. There's a lot of stuff that actually happens in 1915. For one thing, he opens a studio, but what he also does is he decides to charge, customers who are interested in like this movie stuff, a quarter, 25 cents each, to sit on bleachers and watch films get made. It would be like a sitcom where like the 90s sitcom with the studio audience and stuff like that.
Okay.
It would be like that, but instead of inside of a studio, it's outside on bleachers.
Mm.
So how does this work exactly? He's opening a studio. Now, is the studio associated with the union with Edison, or
No, but
He's
see,
independent.
the same year that happens, there's that so in 1912 the U.S. filed a antitrust lawsuit against the Motion Picture Patents Company, which is the Edison company that you had to go through. And so in 1915 the lawsuit was decided. They decided that it was a monopoly, and so they had to break up. And so they do. And that's
what I was. That's actually what I was going with. Was you were kind of saying Universal came in? I was like, so was there a breakup in this monopoly?
Yeah, there was a breakup in that.
Okay, good.
And so that ended Edison's control on the film industry. Suddenly, anyone can do film. So Carl Laemmle officially opens Universal Studios. It was originally called Universal City Studios.
Right.
In fact, it is its own city. It's got its own zip code. It's got its own fire department. Yeah. So it's literally its own city. Yeah.
I did not know that. Son of a bitch.
Yeah. So he used to charge.
Very fine.
So he used to charge 25 cents to get people to watch movies, and they can make all the noise they want back then because there was no sound.
Right.
That's the same year that Birth of a Nation was released, and it was a big hit. We all know about that. We all know like the problems with that one. That was also the same year that the Fox Film Corporation was founded by William Fox. He founded it, except it wasn't in Hollywood. This was in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Like once that lawsuit broke up, like Fox was like, I'm making this film corporation. And that was also the same year that they called them back then. They called them movie palaces, but they're movie theaters.
Okay.
That's when they started replacing the Nickelodeons and stuff like that. There were still Nickelodeon parlors for a while, but those were going to go away. The theaters, I mean, they had, like projection. You couldn't, you didn't have to do this or anything. You can sit down comfortably and watch with, other people. And then of course they would have like either a live orchestra or they'd have a pianist. Like the cheaper one's pianist. You know what I mean? Someone just plays the piano.
Actually, I was wondering about was it some of maybe the smaller ones? They didn't even have like an orchestra or even a piano. So they just maybe had music that was running on would a record player have been
like
created then, or would we be on phonograph?
Yeah, that would happen. That would happen later in the 20s.
A little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The sound on. The first sound on film process was actually in 1919. It was called Tri-Ergon. So I mean, but it wasn't. It didn't catch on. I know, I think William Fox used it in some of his early stuff when he started doing like movie reels and stuff like that. In 1917, Warner Brothers moves to Hollywood. So like suddenly like Warner Brothers is in the picture. And then also in 1919, United Artists was founded, and United Artists is a movie studio that was founded by by like great filmmakers at that time. Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, D.W. Griffith, and Charlie Chaplin. They came together and made this movie studio in 1919.
Really?
Yeah, and they basically, I mean, Charlie Chaplin, like every movie after that, like it was from that company. Basically, he could make any movie he wanted at that point. He was so popular.
What was the appeal? Let's go into that, as you both know your film industry. What was the appeal of Charlie Chaplin? I've seen many of his silent videos. I do think they're funny, but I'm also a person who knows the Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello. So comedy, especially old kind of comedy, is something I grew up on. But silent films weren't something I really had a lot of experience in. What do you think was, as you guys are the movie history experts here, what do you think was what enticed people to want to see Charlie Chaplin?
I think because they were just coming out of the war, just before the Depression period. They were trying to do something to lighten up the mood and everything like that, because many of these people were just simple, like country folk in some ways, and they just wanted some way to get away from reality in some way. And so this was something that they could laugh at and say, oh, these city folks, they think they're all rich and snooty. Guess what? They can look like an absolute idiot, and we can pay money to see it, but hey, it lightens up the mood, it breaks up the routine. They can go to like an early precursor to a matinee kind of thing and just say, you know what, okay, let's load up the family, let's go load up everybody, let's go see something stupid for a while.
I agree.
Now, for a Charlie Chaplin movie, how long was an average movie back then?
His first few movies were like 5 minutes.
Maybe 5, and then it slowly increased to 15 to 20, and then it went
Like
to 30.
he started telling much more elaborate stories especially by the 40s.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
if I'm not mistaken, now I've never seen the movie that I know. Robert Downey Jr. played Charlie Chaplin. I've never seen the movie, but
Hmm.
was he really hell bent on this concept of if Charlie speaks, he dies?
Kind of like, yeah,
A little, yeah.
because people had a misconception of what actors and actresses were supposed to sound like, and then when they actually heard their speaking voice, it didn't sound like what they sounded, so they would redub it to sound like somebody that they thought would be more aesthetically pleasing. Kind of like when we say, oh, we want this model to look like a gorgeous, however figure she is, blonde, blue eyes, whatever. It was sort of the same way with the voices, kind of thing. This person doesn't sound like we're wanting them to sound like, so let's redub it, let's rechange it and sound like what we want it to sound like.
I can see that because we've all had. I think in our age group, we've seen books that we absolutely love. I
Hmm.
know Jack does, and I'm assuming Alyssa, you read books too, and you
Oh
absolutely
yeah,
love.
I'm a
And
huge.
then you see it put on the movie, and you're like, "This doesn't sound anything like what I thought. It doesn't look anything like what I did." I, I mean, it's that whole thing. One thing with a book is everything the imagination can really take effect.
Hmm.
But when we started to peel away from that and we're like, okay, we're going to take this book and put it in a movie, and maybe we're all biased. And you know what? Quite frankly, I don't give a shit if we are. But if we know a book and we're going to see a movie based on a book, we want to see most of the time something faithful. Now, there have been exceptions. The Wizard of Oz,
Yes.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Hmm.
Sometimes, and they're very, very rare, I think we can all admit, when a movie is better than the book. But it is so rare. I can only
That's rare.
name
Yes.
I can only name, like I said, Wizard of Oz, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. These are like the only two movies I can think of. Other than, and this is just because I'm not a high fantasy guy, the Lord of the Rings movies, and that's it. That's it for me. I can put them all on five. I've seen so many books turn. I'll give the Harry Potter books credit
Hmm.
for the fact that they had enough sense to have the writer involved. Absolutely, they're great too. But I know we've all seen so many times when a book gets published and made into a movie, and I'm sorry, it gets published and we fall in love with it. And then we watch a movie and then we're disappointed. And I think for us as a modern audience, I hate using that term modern audience because it sounds more like nowadays, like we want to make a woke audience. But when you look at those things, um, the idea of having sound in a movie voices people talking, when it's something you're not used to. I mean, think about when we've had, what was it? The Wizard of Oz and The Secret Garden. They're black and white, and then there are parts where it just goes to color. And it changes the whole. And I think people don't understand. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just saying, people don't understand the impact that changed on the people's perspective. To see a movie in black and white all of a sudden go into these bright, beautiful colors that fit. So for us who saw those things and experienced them, that was very changing and emotional. So for them to go from silent to talkies, yeah, I mean, when you have this idea of, and I'm promise I'm coming back to this. When you have this idea of how you think someone talks, and then you hear it completely different, it unfortunately bothers us. It's like this is not what I thought.
Hmm.
Right.
And unfortunately, sometimes it changes everything. When you have for example, somebody who's a silent movie person and they become a talkie, and they have as I believe I read, one lady who was a very prominent silent actress, once they went talkies, fell out of favor because her accent was so heavy, most people couldn't understand her.
That happened a lot, yeah. And
Oh,
so,
Yeah,
hell, that happened with Arnold Schwarzenegger in some of his first movies.
Well, they
Hercules in New York.
and they did that with
Hercules Goes to New York. Yeah,
and they did
Hercules
Vivian
Goes to New
Lee
York.
too. They had to teach her how to do a Southern accent because she's a British actress, and they had to give her a Southern type of accent to sound like a Southern belle. So yes,
Hmm.
Well,
But yeah,
remember in Hercules Goes to New York, they dubbed over every line Arnold did. They didn't even use his name. They called him Arnold Strong at the time.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, I remember. I do remember like they eventually released a version with Arnold's original dialogue, and it was very heavy. It was hard to understand him sometimes. So I kind of don't blame them, but at the same time, it's like, it kind of sucks when they do that. Um,
I
but
don't
yeah,
know the answer to this question, PCAT.
I don't know either.
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think
I don't think so.
I don't
I
think they
I think
did in the original Mad Max. I don't think they did.
I think that was his actual accent and everything like that, and that people thought it was dubbed because they don't think of him being an Australian actor because he's actually from
Well,
Australia.
he's not. He's an American who moved to Australia.
Right.
His family moved to Australia, and that's why he has that accent
Mm-hmm.
from Australia, because he spent most of his life there, even though he was, born in America.
Mm-hmm.
So
But no.
anyway, I know we've kind of jumped around here, but that's half the fun of my shows, because, like I said, this is honestly fun. I mean, so we're getting to the point now where we're getting the reels, and where you guys were talking about is we're starting to now get into that point where the live action starts. And I know you said Birth of a Nation and stuff like that. Yes, we all know. And if you don't know, yes, that's not a movie you want to watch, but it is what it is. It's history. And as Jack knows, and Alyssa, you might want to know something. I hate when they try to scrub history.
Yeah.
I
Hmm?
hate it. I
Agreed.
hate everything about it. It's like, oh, we don't want to talk about this. Then how do you know we're not going to fucking do it again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so they went to the real point. Now they're at, we've got the motion pictures, and I'll bring this one up. Maybe you guys, we can get into a little silent film here. Have you guys seen the original Nosferatu?
Yeah, I have.
I may have seen
Okay, is it
I may
just
have seen
me,
it.
or even though it is a silent film, it is still scary as fuck?
It's a very, they really knew how to play with shadows back then, I believe.
They did.
They
They
really, yeah, because
it
just
does
the
look
way they lit it,
something. Yes.
uh, yeah, I mean, like, it's noir basically.
Yes. Film
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've noticed is, I know some people they focus on sound quality, video quality, shadow quality, and that's fine. Everybody's got their thing. Me, I found where my two areas is the music and the aesthetics, the prosthetics. And
Right.
when I look at Nosferatu, for example, dude fucking scares the shit out of me.
I mean, yeah, he look. I mean, just
Yeah.
the way he looks. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't look like Dracula. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
he looks like kind of like a bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he looks like
They
just
definitely dubbed it.
it's so crazy, and it's actually dark and gorgeous still. I mean, that's my thought on it. And if I
Oh
can
yeah.
find a good picture of him. Oh, here you go. Yeah, I'm gonna pull this one up. Share screen. Chrome tab, Nosferatu. I mean, look at that. For that time frame,
Mhm.
that kind of
Mhm.
makeup, that kind of I think that's the thing I appreciate so much about this kind of stuff is we have to remember is, people say, oh, it's cheesy, oh, it's dated. It's like you need to appreciate what the fuck was going on back then. Because if it wasn't for these people doing shit like Nosferatu, you wouldn't have had fucking shows like Titanic or Avatar or a goddamn thing without
Yeah.
shit like this. And
Yeah.
I mean, just look at that face. I mean,
Mhm.
this was what, 19, this was before 1920, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I mean, he's just scary as fuck. I don't care. In fact, I think the silence the fact that it's silent almost makes it scarier.
Yes.
so what I love about the fact that you're bringing up Nosferatu is that Nosferatu actually came out 1922.
Oh, 22. So it was right in the 20s. Okay.
Right,
I thought it was
which is exactly where we left off right now.
Oh yeah, let's go there then because I couldn't remember if it was pre 1920 or post 1920, but I knew it was right in that area. But yeah, let's definitely go on with that.
Well, by 1922, there was about 80% of all production was based in Los Angeles. Now, they were funded by New York people in New York. These studios were funded by like New York moguls and stuff like that. But like they were making money, so of course they were investing more into these studios. So eventually, like sound stuff started creeping in. There's a company called DeForest Phono Film Company, which did like one or two real films with sound.
Mhm.
The following year, 1923, Walt and Roy Disney moved to Hollywood. Walt was 21 years old. And so they started, trying to do business together and stuff like that.
Mhm.
In 1924, Columbia Pictures begins in Hollywood. So now they're they're in the picture. And that same year in Universal Studios, Stage 28 was built. Stage 28 is where they had the set for the Phantom of the Opera, the original one.
Yep.
And he's going to pull out his movie now.
I have it too. I have that movie too.
We all do. So that's the original.
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I can't wait till we get to this.
Oh yeah, no, we're getting to that too. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely getting that. But actually, what's interesting is when I bought this was the first time I'd ever seen the original Phantom of the Opera.
Okay. Yes.
I had never seen it before. Unfortunately, it was one of those movies I had never seen. I've been watching Frankenstein, and I was watching Frankenstein. I was watching Bride of Frankenstein. I had never seen Bride of Frankenstein before. Up until a few months ago. I had never seen it. And then I saw Son of Frankenstein, and I was like, this shit is great. And then, Dracula and stuff. And I know I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but God, this is, to me, the golden age of horror movies right here. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you which is my favorite, so y'all know. And when we eventually get to that point, I will talk about why I love that movie so much. Actually, I'll tell you right now, it's very simple. I love the cinematography of that movie and the music. It's fucking amazing for the time. And I think that's the point. What I'm trying to go with us is I know you guys have an appreciation of film history. I have appreciation of history, and just I sometimes think people forget if it wasn't for the start of things, if it wasn't for the silent films and the stuff, we wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have Avatar. You wouldn't have Titanic. You wouldn't have Star Wars, Star Trek. You wouldn't have this stuff. It all had to start somewhere, and we need to always remember our history, especially as us as geeks, and our love of film history and media history. But
Yeah,
if
so
I remember, yeah. So go ahead, continue
okay.
to.
Okay, well, yeah. So I wanted to explain like that. The Phantom of the Opera stage, they actually preserved that stage until like the late 2000s.
Yeah. When
Really?
They had that stage and they reused it over and over for other movies. For they did a Phantom of the Opera remake. They used the same set. So that was one of those things that were around for a long time. But it's gone now though. But
And you said it was on stage 28 at
yeah, so it was
Universal?
stage 28 Universal Studios Hollywood. Yeah,
Mhm.
and so in 1926, Warner Brothers and Goldman Sachs create the Vitaphone Corporation, which was like that's the corp that's what they wanted to do was they wanted to make accompanying music for like custom accompanied music, not just the stuff that everybody would play. But it wasn't necessarily for talkies though. Eventually, it would be used for talkies. The following year, in 1927, that's when the Academy Motion Pictures Art and Sciences was founded. And the reason why it was founded was because one of these film execs, they wanted to build a house in there. They bought a piece of land. They wanted their set crews, the people who build sets, to build his house. Well, they had just unionized, and they were like, "No, we're not doing that. That's not what we do." And so he was, he was worried about other parts of the film industry unionizing. So he created, him and a bunch of other people created the Academy as a way to prevent unionization from these other companies. The unionization eventually came, but for a while it did stave off the idea for like actors and directors, etc.
Are we talking about, is that what became eventually the Screen Actors Guild?
No, this
No,
is Oscars. This is
what.
Oscars.
Yeah, this is what gets the Oscars. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is what gets the okay.
Yeah, that's a couple of years away though.
I didn't know the Oscars were union.
Well, I mean, it was a way to prevent people from unionizing.
Control. It was so they could stay independent as possible, basically.
Yeah. Yes. That's that same year, Walt Disney was working for Universal, and he created a character called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he left, he thought he could take Oswald with him. He found out he couldn't. That Universal was keeping him. It pissed him off. He vowed to have complete control of his characters from there on. And you know which characters he made after that?
Gee, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy.
But he wasn't originally Mickey Mouse, though.
Oh boy!
Yeah, I know he wasn't originally. Or, hey, what was the name of the? Well, anyway, we can get that. So, was it? It's going to be interesting when we get into that later when we talk about live action versus when Disney came in and did full motion animation with Snow White. Which I can't wait to hear your guys' opinions on that stuff next time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
But, yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah, Tugboat Willie. You're right.
Steamboat
Willie. Steamboat Willie. Yeah, Tugboat Willie. Steamboat Willie. Yeah, he corrected himself. He said, "Oh, Steamboat Willie." Yeah, Steamboat. And he's like, you can find that on YouTube, folks. And if you think it's silly or it's pointless, you got to remember everything has to start from somewhere. I mean, like I said,
yeah, there was more that happened too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like Warner Brothers built their first sound studio that same year, 1927. Mm-hmm. And there's five of the studios got together and they signed an agreement because they realized that sound was coming, and so the agreement was that like they would all adopt like a single sound system. It didn't happen because they all came up with their own sound system and they wanted to use theirs.
Yes.
But that's one of the first times that like these studios are coming together in like agreement for stuff, certain stuff like that. The Jazz Singer was released that year too, which is the first official sound movie.
Now, was that was the whole thing with their obviously they all came up with their own thing and nobody wanted to agree on it. Was that for just talking, or was that to include multiple sounds, including sound effects and stuff?
Well, like they knew that the Jazz Singer like changed, like it got such attention that they knew it was going to change the industry. So they came together. They were going to be like, okay, well, let's go ahead and agree on a sound system when this happens, and stuff like that. So that's why it happened. And then of course, Fox acquired the Tri-Ergon process, and he started creating newsreels. They were called Movie Tone at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. All that 1927. All of that happened in 1927.
Yep.
What was a movie tone? Just help me out
it
with that.
was a newsreel
where
a
you see like
newsreel. Okay, they were called
saying
movie tones. Okay.
breaking news over Europe, breaking news over whatever.
And Fox got very popular with that because he realized that all he had to do was like travel to other countries. Like he got like Mussolini. He did an interview with, well, not he, but they got an interview with Mussolini. They got interviewed with like other world leaders. And then there would be like, breaking news. This interview just happened, see what, Rasputin, see what Hitler has to say about something. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Or Churchill or whatever. Yes. Or
right.
The king. Yes.
Or Mussolini, yes. Or Stalin, or Churchill, or Truman, or not Truman. Well, yeah, Truman at that time too. Truman or FDR. I get what you're saying there. Yeah.
The following year, 1928, RCA and General Electric came together and they created RKO, which is a famous movie company that eventually like was bought out by Desilu, and Desilu was eventually bought out, so. But yeah, that's RKO started there. The first full talkie film came out. It's called Lights of New York. And
really?
Yes, and that is the year that Disney released Steamboat Willie.
Do you think it was easier to do animation and sound versus live action?
That's much harder. When I get
please explain that.
In fact, you can get into that right now. I mean, like
okay,
I'm at 1928, and I want to wait until I talk about 1929.
So color goes back to 1666 with Isaac Newton, basically, and he was experimenting with the spectrums and everything like that, and eventually there was this guy called Young, and he collaborated with this guy Marshall, and they studied electromagnetism kind of thing. And basically they did an experiment where they would take photos similar to that horse one, only it would be in 3 different colors: green, red, and blue. And they would take pictures like that, and then they would gradually merge those 3 colors and make it into a single photo color. So because of that, we get our first photograph in color in 1862. And
really?
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I really 1862 with our first color
1862,
photo?
yes.
Look, I'm a history guy. I know how during the Civil War. I know that
it was rare, but yeah, it was rare.
But it was the reason why it was so rare is because it took so long to do, because you had to dry it a certain way and everything.
Long. But really, that far back, that's amazing.
Yes, I mean they started doing.
As a history guy, Alyssa, the Civil War was the first actual war America had where pictures were taken, and of course they're all mostly black and white. And you're telling me that during this time, there was an actual company that, or people who were putting color into. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yep.
and then they started experimenting and using toning with the color too, to use the color to set the moods for kind of certain photos. But then they gradually shifted away from that, and they would just put it randomly. It wouldn't be just for making a dark, somber mood. It would just be like, okay, we want to put this here, so let's put this there. So they shifted that. And then they gradually shifted into the additive color, which is the tiny, tiny pixels that create the illusion. And then there's also the subtractive color. And so those are basically used to create the color photos the way they are somewhat today now, basically. But it also goes into what Jack was talking about, the cinema color camera kind of thing. Those kind of things basically help establish some of these early silent films, because Jack and I watched one the other night, and it's from 1902.
I think so. Yeah.
Let me check my note real quick. Yeah, I think 1902. So basically, this film is in color. But the thing is, it took 21 people to colorize that film.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having to work through it to get it colorized. I mean, they have a whole factory of people that are specialized just to colorize that one film. And eventually they had to expand it and create a whole studio kind of thing to do that kind of thing. Because if not, it would have just been like mountains and mountains of people to create that one single color. And in 1922, they started realizing, wait a minute, let's start using this color for musicals kind of thing. And they started creating a contract where they said, well, we're going to make it where the early films are going to be colorized. But it was just for the musical one. I guess it was to detract from the fact that they didn't have a lot of other things going on, like the special effects, the action aspects. So they would use the color to basically tell that story a lot better. And they had to be hand tinted and everything like that. Each one of them, like I said, go back to that 1902 one. And Disney is in that process too. And he creates the Flowers and Trees cartoon and also the Three Little Pigs cartoon at this time as well. So
Really?
this is all prior to Snow White, but he creates these color films.
I had watched a documentary on Walt Disney sometime back, and I had known about Steamboat Willie and a few early projects, but not in the detail you're talking about. I had never even heard of that. That's
It's crazy. I mean, because they were using the technique called the Technicolor 2 split. So basically, it was split into two different strips, kind of thing. And this is around 19. And their first film, believe it or not, from that time made $250,000 during that time. I mean, for 1920s era, for them to make that much money, it's insane, but they did.
Well, what was the cost of a ticket back then? A nickel? Maybe a dime?
Maybe 3 or 4 cents, maybe at the most.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
And yeah, that's why when and I don't mean to interrupt, please continue after.
No, you're
That's
fine.
why when I see people, they're like, these classic movies didn't make a lot of money, and it's like, no, they did for the time they came out. Everybody wants to try and adjust for inflation, which is, we all know, very difficult with how it plays out. But you look at movies also, I think they're like, how did this movie make so much money? I think people forget that movies, there weren't VCRs back then.
No.
Wait till we get to that, where the point is movies used to get in a theater and then get re-released in a theater. Wizard of Oz went several times.
Disney notoriously does that.
Yes,
Constantly,
exactly. Yeah, and I can't wait till you guys. I think we got a great series theme going here. We're only in the 20s right now, and we got so much to do. And you guys are just fucking teaching me so much. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I actually love it. So please, Alyssa, continue.
So the thing is, the Technicolor.
I'm sorry, I just said this. We got about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna call it at an hour. I'm sorry, Alyssa.
So I'll wrap up with this bit with the Technicolor thing. They had to stop doing. They shifted into that, but the thing is, with the Technicolor kind of thing, they had to have a special crew just for the makeup, a special crew for the camera kind of stuff, and they also had a special director just to do all just Technicolor. They couldn't just hire certain people to just say, okay, you're on Technicolor. They had a special crew just to do the Technicolor process. And the thing is, we get these early films like Robin Hood in 1935, and then Eastman Color takes over. Then we have the Warner Metro Deluxe kind of things. And basically, certain ones later on in the future try to change these early films to get them colorized, like Ted Turner. But because of Orson Welles' death, that's the reason why Citizen Kane will never be colorized, is because Orson Welles' death sort of put a halt to us as no, this film will never be colorized.
No, I'm going to say this. Citizen Kane, I use that term a lot when Alyssa, you sometimes you'll hear me say, look, we just want good stories. We're not asking you to make the next Citizen Kane. And I say that a lot because I've seen Citizen Kane. I could not, if you told me I was going to watch Citizen Kane in color, I'd be like, no, I'm not.
Rosebud.
Rosebud. But yeah, actually, that's a great topic we can definitely talk about another time, is that whole turning things into color. And well, we actually got time. What do you think about that? The whole taking a black and white movie and turning the color. There are certain movies where I can see how that works, but there are so many movies where I'm like, if you put it in color, I think maybe with Charlie Chaplin speaking, it's going to ruin the movie.
Right. Now, there's been 2 new processes that have been added in with the color processing. There's one called the bleach bypass, and that was used in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And there's also the digital intermediary, which goes with the movies like Saving Private Ryan. Those are the 2 different color processes that have been released recently. But like I said, these early stuff like that, like I said, the coloring, it took a whole team to just create that kind of stuff. So like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy the way the color process shifted. But these early films, yeah, the coloring process, you could tell it took a long time to do, because the color's a little bit off, because sometimes you'll see it in the early films that you'll see that the red and blues starting to come out, but they couldn't get the yellows to pop out properly. So they take out the blues, and they would try to put in the reds to combat that.
So was it kind of trying to put those colors in manually?
Yes. So they had to do those manually. They would be doing it like that film reel. They would be doing it 3 different shots: red, blue, green, and they had to do everything. And then gradually they had to mesh them together, basically, in a way. And so if they didn't, it would just basically, it was a long, tedious process. But then they started taking out the blues, and that's why the sky, you would see some would have blue sky, certain ones wouldn't.
Who doesn't like The Godfather?
Hey, Jack, leave the gun, grab the cannoli. That's all I'm gonna say. Leave the gun, grab the cannoli. Yes.
So we should probably talk about 1929 soon.
Yes.
Because that's where we can end it in 1929. So
yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So that's when the first Academy Awards was actually started. That's when
really,
and it was way different than it is today.
Way different. 5 categories.
It was 5 categories instead of like the 17 they have now.
Exactly.
There were 250 guests instead of the thousands they have now. Yeah. The winners were actually announced 3 months beforehand.
Yes, in the newspaper.
Really?
Yes. Beforehand, yes.
And the awards themselves, they were only about 15 minutes long.
Yes.
And they gave out 15 awards, and it probably saved 15% on their car insurance too.
I'm sure.
So just for fun, just for fun, I'm going to pull up Oscars 1929. What won that year?
Well, the thing is, it was not for one particular thing. It was basically the whole year. So an actress would get one for her performance throughout that whole year. It wouldn't be for a particular film. She'd get it for like multiple awards. Like say Elizabeth Taylor. Say Elizabeth.
Serious?
Yeah. So Elizabeth Taylor would say, let's say it's Elizabeth Taylor, for instance. She would have gotten it for say Cleopatra, Giant, and all that in one single year. But that's the way it was. That these people would just get it for that one single year, not multiple. No, it would just be multiple.
So
rather than a performance,
Yes, exactly. Not
like a single performance.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just a single project. Damn. Can I be honest? I'd actually think it'd be more entertaining if it was like that. Still.
So then the story I kind of want to end it on is with William Fox. I don't know. Like I find this story rather tragic, but
it is
so
tragic indeed.
so he tried to buy MGM, like a share of MGM or something like that, and I'm not exactly sure. Like somehow legally that he wasn't supposed to do that, and so the Justice Department actually sued him over antitrust issues, and the same year that happened, he got into a car accident and injured himself. So he had to deal with like the injury and then the lawsuit. The lawsuit took years, of course. By the time he recovered from his injury, the stock market crashed.
Yep.
1929, yeah.
So he lost. So then there was a takeover of his company. He was in litigation for like 5-6 years. Finally, in 1936, he tried to bribe a judge, and he was sentenced to 5 months in jail for trying to bribe a judge. By 1930, though, he had lost his corporation. It was gone, and he would die only a couple more years later.
Oh man, is this the guy who? What we would say the current or what used to be 20th Century Fox, or is this
Yep.
Okay, so this would eventually become
one of the same.
Okay, we are gonna definitely have to get into all that stuff, those corporations and stuff, those rises and everything. But guys and gals, we're hitting our 1 hour mark and we've only gotten to 1929. So unfortunately, well, not unfortunately for me, I will not be available next week because I'm going to a 4-day hard rock festival. So I'm going to be headbanging to
fun.
Korn, Metallica, Disturbed, and all kinds of other crazy headbanging hard rock shit. And I'm going to have a fucking blast. But next 2 weeks from now, Alyssa and Jack, if you want to, let's pick up at 1930 because we're starting to get into those areas. 1930s,
Golden Age of Hollywood.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Golden Age of Hollywood. Yes,
monsters and all that. That's coming. Yes.
This is my baby, right? Yeah. Look, I love this. Thank you both for being a part of the show. Being a part of this, talking about the history of film. You both have such a great wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait 2 weeks from now to do it again. I wish I could do it next week, but sorry, I'm going to a concert. I'm going to go headbang, damn it, even though I cut my hair off a while back. I'm still going to go headbang like hell. I'm actually hoping that Disturbed will finish out Saturday with Sound of Silence. Their Simon and Garfunkel, because 1, love the song from Simon and Garfunkel. 2, love the remake they did. And
I can't even do that no more.
Funk it down with the sickness, funk it down with the sickness, and this is the hate. You give it over to me. Don't be surprised if I tell you I'm hoarse as fuck on Tuesday, and that I pulled some whiplash. But I'm gonna have a blast, man. We got Cypress Hill, we got all kinds of stuff coming, but can't wait for part 3. Oh, PCAT says Can't wait for part 3. I'll talk to Universal. Yeah, actually,
That's why I wanted to stop the.
This is definitely where we should go next. We should segue into, like you said, the golden age, and we can talk about the Universal horror movies, but we can also talk about the other golden age movies that came out during the third, because really the 30s, 40s were, kind of the golden age, and then I can't wait to, what my personal favorite is going to be when we get near, because we've got to do at least one show on Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes, I was going to say. I'm actually looking forward to that. He's going to be in the. Well, he moves to Universal in the 40s, yes. And then he spends like the next 20 years making movies from it. It's wonderful. Steven Spielberg at one point sneaks on the stage. He gets kicked out.
No,
young Steven Spielberg.
One of the things I definitely want to get into, and then we'll probably close out with this, is, thinking about just how certain stars got their, started out in roles that, like when we get into like Bela Lugosi and things like that, these are really, when you talk about, personally for me, like I said, Creature for Black Balloon's my favorite. But I've got to be honest, the atmosphere in Dracula is just fucking epic for its time. All right, folks, with that, we're going to close it out. I am going to put my outro up if I can freaking find it. And then I will see you two backstage in a minute. All right, everyone, peace and long life. We're going to go into 2 weeks from now, not next week, because the only thing you'll be seeing on YouTube from me next week is me headbanging at concerts and taking a lot of photos. That being said, 2 weeks from now, we're going to get into the 30s and the golden age of cinema and the golden age of, in my opinion, I don't want to call it the golden age. I want to say the best era of horror, in my opinion. And I love slashers, don't get me wrong, but still, there's something about that. So I hope you all come back next time. We will catch you all on the flip side. Peace and long life. Live long and prosper.